Hello and welcome to the lesson where we'll be discussing some common mistakes that developers make when using operators and expressions in their code. It's important to be aware of these pitfalls so that you can avoid them in your own programming. So during this lesson, we'll discuss the following topics: common mistakes when using operators and expressions, and best practices for writing clean and efficient code using operators and expressions. One of the most common mistakes is using the assignment operator instead of the equality operator when comparing values. For example, the following code will always return true even if x and y are not equal. So let's look at the demo 1. We define two variables, int x equals 5 and int y equals 10. After that, we use the assignment operator instead of the equality operator. This code will always return true. This is because the assignment operator assigns the value of y to x, and the expression x equals y will always evaluate to the value of y, which is not a Boolean value. To compare x and y, we should use the equality operator as at the demo 1 at the bottom. Another common mistake is using single quotes instead of double quotes when declaring a string. Single quotes are used to define a character, while double quotes are used to define a string. For example, the following code will give you a compile time error, so let's look at the demo 2 from the top. It should be like at the demo 2 from the bottom. Another pitfall to watch out for is not using parentheses to specify the order of operations in an expression. For example, the following code will return a different value than intended if we want to perform addition first. So let's look at the demo 3 from the top. And in this case, the multiplication operation is performed before the addition operation, resulting in a value of 25 for the variable result. To ensure that the addition is performed first, we need to use parentheses, like at the demo 3 from the bottom. In this case, the addition operation is performed before the multiplication operation, resulting in a value of 30 for the variable result. It's also important to be mindful of the type of variables and operators you are using. Using the wrong type of operator can lead to unexpected results or errors in your code. For example, using the modulus operator or percent sign with a float value will lead to a compile time error. In summary, always be careful when using operators and pay attention to the order of operations. These are some of the most common mistakes that developers make when working with operators and expressions, but there are many more to watch out for. If you ever unsure of how a piece of code will behave, test it out and see what happens. Let's discuss best practices for writing clear and efficient code using operators and expressions. First, it's important to use parentheses to clearly indicate the order of operations in complex expressions. This makes the code easier to read and understand and prevents errors caused by operator precedence. For example, instead of writing the following from the demo 4 at the top, it's better to write as at the demo 4 from the bottom, because at the demo 4 from the bottom, we use parentheses to indicate the order of operations. Another best practice is to use consistent naming conventions for variables. This improves the readability of the code and makes it easier to understand what is happening in the program. For example, use sum instead of x to name a variable that contains a sum of numbers. It is also a good practice to use the plus equals, minus equals, multiply and equal, and divide and equal operators to simplify the code and make it more readable. For example, instead of writing the code from the demo from the top, it's better to write the code as the demo from the bottom. Finally, it's always a good practice to thoroughly test and check your code to ensure that it is working correctly and efficiently. Always be on the lookout for potential errors and improvements for your code. So that's it for the lesson. Thank you for attention and see you on the next one. Bye.